Hey guys, this is Brad from Blue Nile Farm. Now I want to talk about episode number 7, and we're just talking about water. Water on the property. What kind of water do you have? And I know this is kind of a silly topic that a lot of people are like, well, why do you bother with water? When you move out in the agricultural area, you don't have city water a lot of times. You do not have it. You're not going to get it. So you have a couple different options. You can have somebody drill a well on your property, which may or may not work. Two, you can have a cistern where water is caught probably from your roofs, going through your gutters into a strainer into a big tank, and that'll be your cistern, and you can use that. Or B, you can have maybe a pond system where you actually use the water from your pond that goes through chlorinators. You also do the same thing with cisterns, where you'd actually take that water, run it through a chlorinator, and basically run it through the house or buildings or wherever, and that's how you get your water supply. But finding water is really a big issue, and I would say one of the greatest expenses I had on my property was water. Water was the biggest pain in the ass. And the problem was that I started off because I spent money buying and having somebody drill a well. Well, I live a mile and a half from Lake Erie. As soon as they started drilling so far, they hit salt. And so it's not going to do any good drinking salt water. So they did that, and I canceled that program. So then I wound up spending money buying a cistern. So a cistern was put in, and my wife loves to take showers, and it was costing me an extra $60 or more per week to have water trucked into the property because of her going through the water. Now at this time, I didn't have animals. It was just me and her living in a 1,500 square foot ranch house, and I had to buy water all the time, and it was just driving me crazy. So it got to be very expensive, and people would just keep dropping water, and you'd be paying for it, and it was pretty ridiculous. So eventually I wanted to spend a lot of money and having a pond system put in, which is basically a 30-acre pond was dug. Basically I have a float, and basically we had to kind of have that water sucked into the house where it runs through the chlorinators, like I said, and out. Then eventually after the house, we wound up building barns, and we shoot the water all the way up to the barns, and we have a couple hydrants, and that's how we water our animals. But it took me and cost me a lot of money to get water, a water system, so I have it. Now, I have an unlimited amount of water, and that's the greatest thing because now I don't have to buy it. Everything's relatively free, but it costs me money to maintain the system. I have to buy chlorine. I have to kind of check on it all the time. The other problem I've had is my basement's flooded 3 times because of um, basically because the chlorinators, they have to run all the time. So every day they purge themselves and they clean. Well, all it takes is that sump pump to stop one time, and within 24 hours my basement's flooded. So about 3 or 4 times over the last 20 years I've had flooded basement because of that, and it just was a nightmare. So I'm not a really big fan of basements for one, and I'm really not a big fan of water problems like that. So be advised though that you need to have a good source of water, and that's where I would suggest doing some homework. Now, if you're building from scratch, then I suggest I would look into a pond system. But you need to find out what water systems available, and maybe they'll tell you that the wells are really good in your area and it works out. But water is a huge problem for me and my neighbors. And my neighbors, even though that city water was starting to run down the street, once you found out what the costs were, we're talking $20,000 to $30,000 or more, depending on the frontage you have, just to tie in to city water. And then I found out that the water in the area that I would live in would be the highest in the whole county. And, as far as fees go. So it's kind of like dumb. So I basically opted to stick with my system that I have now. I'm not going to ever get city water if I have my way. Most of my neighbors won't, because for 20 plus years, 30 years, we've all battled the water system. And basically we now accept the way we are, and we're not going to invest more into it. So I suggest, though, if you're moving into an area, you may not even want to drink the water because it's not any good. And when you move out to the country, you do not generally get city water. So I just want you to be fully aware that water is something that people take for granted until you move out to the country. And if you're used to living in the city, turning on the faucet, and you used to have chlorinated city water, you're going to be in for a rude awakening when it comes down to moving to the country. That's all I got to tell you. I mean, I remember when my parents were taking us around, and we would test the water from different places, and it would smell of sulfur, and they smelled like eggs. It's water you don't even want to mess with. I wouldn't even want to take a shower in there and smell like an egg. You know, It's just not my thing. So, you know, you gotta go and really do your homework on the water situation, and just don't take it for granted that, hey, I'm moving out the country. Oh, I'll just put I'll do this or I'll do that. It's very expensive, and water is a huge problem. If you start having a lot of animals like I do, horses or cattle, sheep, whatever, and you start creating herds, you're going to be going through hundreds and hundreds of gallons a day. And you need to, besides your lifestyle, you're going to have to manage it and do that. So, me and my girlfriend right now, she buys water, for the house if we need it for coffee and stuff. And other than that, we just use our water from the pond system just for bathing and, simple stuff. Everything else that the animals drink it, but we don't. So, you know, that's just really what I deal with. So I wanted to point out issues with water, and because waters are a huge problem, and you need to make a decision because it can be very costly of an issue. And I love having a pond. Don't get me wrong. The pond was a great thing. Now this year I had a weird issue with ponds. We've had kind of a drought, and I had more algae in my pond than I've ever had in my life, and it was like a green mass of water. I don't understand. It never happened before. So I'm going to probably wind up getting a fountain this year to kind of manage my ponds. Now, on my property, I have basically 2.5 ponds. And I love having ponds because I like to bounce around and go fishing and stuff like that. And that's another thing that's nice about a pond, is that that's a good recreational area for you too. People come over, visit, you can go play around if you're into fishing. It's nice to have a pond. And, but ponds cost money. And the average pond in my area, if for somebody to come in and put one in, is at least $10,000. And if you run a dozer and you do it yourself, you probably do it for $5,000. But, again, you still have to move the dirt, and you still got a lot of work to do, and it's just not as simple as just digging a hole. There's a little bit more to it, and that's when you get with soil and water. And you do a test hole and make sure you got a clay base, and and that's just a whole nother gamut. But that's why I say you need to work with your county extension agents and your soil and water people, because especially soil and water for ponds, because they'll come out and they'll help you, and they'll tell you if it's a good site for a pond or not. And then you know what you're getting into. And then you deal with it from there. But ponds nowadays are pretty expensive, and rental places, for a big piece of equipment, they're going to cost you a lot of money, and you got to have the insurance for it. And unless you buy insurance from them, that's going to be a lot of added cost. So it's not a very simple thing to do. A lot of times they don't want to rent big equipment to people that never used it before either. So that's another issue. So, but we'll talk about equipment down the road. But I wanted to cover water because it's something people don't think about to the last second, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, I don't got no water. And I want you to understand that water is a huge problem out in the country. You need to do your homework on it, find out if it's suitable for you, and go from there. And that's really the best thing I can tell you. Make sure if you have a well, how much water is actually in that well. You want to make sure, is it going to produce or is it going to run dry? You don't necessarily know until you know. So, hey guys, talk to you later, and we're going to talk about another topic here real soon. So I'll see you soon.